Greetings, everyone. It is GleeCon back in the house once again with another episode of Lore of Warcraft. On our last episode, we ran through Silver Pine Forest yet again. We did the elite quests down at the bottom of the map of the zone, and they were mostly concerned with killing these elite werewolves. And even though it was a green level quest, it was elite, and I just happened to luck up into a group of like-minded undead that wanted to run through it. So we ran that, we were successful, and it was pretty good. I think we had one death in there, and that was just kind of a dumb move where I used my Void Walker, even though we had a party, and pulled, and then forgot to kind of yank the Void Walker back and aggroed a bunch more mobs than we could handle. We didn't get a full party wipe, but I did cause the death of myself and at least one unfortunate other. We've also been reading the Alliance Player's Guide, and in Chapter 3 of that, we looked through a lot of the prestige classes. So stay a while, admission, as we do Chapter 4 now, which is called Magic. Now, this is a lengthy chapter, but most of it is just going to be us going through text, little blurbs about the different spells and magic items that are, I guess, more appropriate for use by the Alliance. But we do have a few pages here to begin with that kind of describe, as happened in the Horde Player's Guide, what's the history and relationship that each of the various Alliance races have with magic. Magic among the Alliance. Magic has existed on Azeroth since the Titans created the Well of Eternity. You might even be able to argue that it existed before that if we do a little retconning. The Well's energies evolved the nearby Kaldorei, who harnessed its power. Disagreements, and again, you could maybe argue that it actually evolved the Dark Trolls into the Kaldorei. Disagreements over magic divided the ancient Kaldorei Empire, and magic was at the heart of the Burning Legion's invasion, which caused the first major war, and split Kalimdor into the continents that cover Azeroth today. And again, you maybe can call the battle between the primordial dragons and Galakron as maybe the first major war. Magic has played a role in every major conflict in Azeroth and was instrumental in the creation of not only the Burning Legion, but also the Horde and the Scourge. Does this mean that magic is evil, however? Does it mean the Alliance stands against all magic? Not at all. The Alliance recognizes that magic is a tool. It can be misused, as it has been many times throughout history, but it can also be used wisely to aid people and to minimize dangers and combat evil. Indeed, against foes like the Scourge and the demons, magic is one of the only weapons available. The Alliance would be foolish not to recognize that and take advantage of it when their enemies are so willing to grasp the same power for their own purposes. So you can almost liken magic sort of to the debate that rages around firearms nowadays. At the same time, the Alliance is wary of magic, particularly arcane magic. Divine magic is far more benevolent, coming as it does from well-intentioned gods or directly from nature. Again, kind of, because you do have those such as like the Blood Elf Paladins that in a way are misusing and co-opting holy magic. So again, there's a lot more nuance going on here. But arcane magic draws from the Well of Eternity, which was not part of Azeroth until created by the Titans, themselves outsiders, and arcane magic is far more vulnerable to corruption. I think they've retconned a lot of that. Of course, the Alliance is not a unified front. It is a loose collection of like-minded races and individuals, each with their own beliefs and convictions. Each of the Alliance races has a different attitude toward magic based upon history and hard experience. So we'll begin with the Ironforged Dwarves. Dwarves traditionally had little use for magic. They are creatures of earth and stone and understand the physical far better than the mystical. The fact that elves are more prone to magic use and abuse may have something to do with the dwarves' antipathy toward both that race and that realm. Magic is strange and elusive and impossible to grasp and hold and measure, just as elves are sly and slippery. Okay, if you think about the Dark Irons and the current state of the Alliance and the classes, it's not so black and white. There's definitely magic used by and among the dwarves, although is it more corruptive to the dwarves? Perhaps. This attitude has changed recently, however, as the dwarves discover more about their own heritage. They are reevaluating their stance on the world around them. The Titans were clearly masters of magic, having created the Well of Eternity. They also created the dwarves, which means the dwarves and the source of Azeroth's arcane magic share a common ancestor. Does that mean dwarves might possess an innate gift for magic as well, thanks to this shared heritage? Perhaps. The dwarves' newly rediscovered history is also causing new interest in divine magic. The Titans were majestic creatures akin to gods, and supposedly they personally fashioned and breathed life into the dwarven people. That gives the entire race a direct connection to their creators, something that can easily inspire belief. More Ironforged dwarves have become religious recently as a result, either in efforts to communicate with their progenitors or as a way of following their footsteps. Of course, many Ironforged dwarves still frown on magic, both arcane and divine. This is particularly true with older dwarves. These elders still favor steel and stone over magic and disapprove of their children's new fascination with such strange rituals. Over time, however, as more and more young dwarves not only study magic but grow proficient with it, this attitude will shift farther until the race as a whole at least tolerates its presence. Yeah, there's been a lot of retconning there, particularly towards divine magic. What about the Wildhammer dwarves? Well, it's as a non-playable race. So whatever they say, sure, what the heck, we can say it still holds until we play Cataclysm Quest and really take a deeper dive, because that's the only area where you really get into it with the Wildhammers, other than a little bit like Airy Peak. Wildhammer dwarf culture is different from that of their cousins in Ironforge. Wildhammers live out in the world, residing in forests and mountains rather than in caves. They spend their days out under the sky and surrounded by animals. Though no less pragmatic, this lifestyle has left Wildhammers with a greater appreciation for nature and a greater admiration for natural beauty, majesty, and freedom. As a result, Wildhammers have always been more religious than their cousins, though their religion is nature worship. Divine magic is well known and highly respected, particularly any magic involving animals, weather, and air. Arcane magic is less common, and most Wildhammers are wary around magi. Study is not a common practice among these dwarves who prefer climbing and riding to reading, and any dwarf who buries himself in books is a matter for concern. At the same time, Wildhammers are more accepting of individual quirks, and so more tolerant when one of their own wants to do something unusual. They may not understand why anyone would spend his days buried in dusty tomes rather than riding griffins, but they will not force him to abandon his own interests. The Wildhammers know their true heritage, but they show no interest in pursuing it. To them, the Titans are still only legends and myths. The world is their home, and the sky their parent. This means the Wildhammers' attitudes toward magic may not shift as much as the Ironforges, but they're already more tolerant toward the arcane and more attuned to the divine, so the cousins may grow closer in their views rather than farther apart. That makes sense. Okay, we'll read High Elves first because it's encapsulated here. Then we'll read this little flavor text story. The Elves have a lot to answer for, particularly when it comes to magic. Some blame them for the Burning Legion gaining entrance to Azeroth, and thus for Kalimdor being shattered and the various races being dragged into war. If not for the Elves' obsession with the arcane, they say, none of this would have happened. Demons would not have gained a foothold in this world. The Scourge would never have existed. No. Okay, sure, maybe if you take it back to elves in general. However, these people misunderstand the High Elves. High Elves long knew that arcane magic was dangerous and built rune stones around Quel'Thalas to hide their arcane magic from the Legion. High Elves also helped establish the Guardians of Tirisfal to further protect the world from arcane magic's dangers, though as all know, the Legion insinuated itself into the world anyway. In ancient times, the Highborn simply didn't believe that arcane magic could be bad. Today, High Elves are peculiarly susceptible to arcane magical addiction because of their magic withdrawal subsequent to Arthas' pollution of the Sunwell. High Elves created the Sunwell shortly after founding Quel'Thalas. Since that time, all High Elves everywhere could draw upon that powerful arcane magic, and I would say that the Nightborn even take this to an extreme. They were bathed in power every second of every day. Some High Elves never knew anything else. They had the Sunwell all their lives up until recently. Now that the Sunwell is befouled, every single High Elf suffers acute pangs of withdrawal and having a hard time of it. Some of them know why, some of them don't. This feeling inspired the schism that created the Blood Elves, who far outnumber the High Elves. Blood Elves have a different set of priorities and behaviors than High Elves and no longer consider themselves High Elves. Still, an arcane tradition links the two races, and arcanists appear often among both. Yeah, other than like philosophy, there's nothing that's separating High Elves and Blood Elves. High elves have held a long association with the holy light as well. Though few become paladins, their priests proved invaluable in the Third War. High elves understand the importance of both arcane and divine magic. I would say as do the blood elves, but again, in a more forceful way. They will take that divine magic. All right, here's a story. Elon started, eyes wide open, even as the last ward shattered. Trying to shake the sleep from his mind, he sat up, groping for his dagger with one hand, while the other slid into the arm of his robe. He transferred the dagger to his other hand as he stood, tugging the robe up on his second arm, and then he was backpedaling to avoid the dark figure that had suddenly appeared in his path. How dare you? The words were quiet, hissed as much as spoken, and Elon recognized the voice behind the outrage. Marteleth. The figure stepped closer into the last of the firelight, and as the sharp features revealed themselves, Elon saw that he had been right. Marteleth, what are you doing here? For an instant his brother did not answer. Then he spat directly in Elon's face. I tracked you, Marteleth snarled. For weeks I searched for you, afraid you had been taken, harmed, even killed. Marteleth's hands clenched with rage. I came to rescue you, but you did not need me. You were not taken. You left. You chose to go. And for this? He gestured past them toward Elon's pack and the thick book beside it. You dishonor our people with this insanity. You shame our heritage, our history, our family. You don't understand, Elon protested, but already Marteleth had turned away and stalked back into the darkness. Watching him go, Elon let the dagger slide from his grip, its point digging into the ground when it hit. You don't understand, Elon repeated softly, still staring at the spot where his brother had disappeared. I have to do this. I have to make it right. He glanced toward his spellbook, thinking of the incantations that lay within, the power that called to him, and the possibilities it offered. I have to make it right. But he knew it was useless. His brother would never understand, nor would his parents. That was why Elon had left. He could not study at home, not this, and mastery would require total concentration. He had needed space to think, to practice, to learn. Then he would return, and they would see. He would show them all. Not all of us are weak, he assured himself, retrieving the dagger and sinking back onto his bedroll. Not all become corrupt. With a thought and a gesture and a whispered word, he reset his wards, shielding his camp from detection and harm. Then he shut his eyes. Not every highborn is doomed to fail, he muttered as he slid back into sleep. I will not fail. And in his dreams, Elon the Mage strode forth, powerful magic at his beck and call, and restored their race to its former glory. In a way that's kind of like the story of Malfurion and, his brother, Illidan. Although, like, Malfurion and Illidan light, crystal light version. Okay, Night Elves. I think that's supposed to be a Night Elf, and I hate it. The Night Elves are the opposite of their cousins, the High Elves, in many ways, but particularly in their attitudes toward magic. After the War of the Ancients, the Night Elves recognized the magical addiction of their kin and pulled away from it, resisting magic's lure and maintaining their discipline despite its temptation. They urged their brethren, the Highborn, to resist as well, but the Highborn surrendered to the magic, trusting their own intellects to control its flow. This sundered the race. Ever since, Night Elves have viewed arcane magic as, if not evil itself, at least as something too powerful for anyone to control. Those who study the arcane do so at not only their own risk, but the risk of everyone around them, and it is sheer arrogance to think anyone can tame such a force and bend it to her will. Alright, so that little story we just read, I guess, is talking about basically the Night Elves, if you wanted to have a Night Elf mage, which now, that's just normal. The Night Elves turn to nature and their Eternals for protection instead. Again, the Eternals are now something different. And over the centuries, they developed a deep and abiding love for the world and all its creatures. Night Elves commune with the world, seeking to understand it, and as a result, it is common for a Night Elf to become a healer, particularly a druid or priestess of the moon. This occupation is a calling, and Night Elves revere their druids and their priestesses of the moon. Druids comprise about 8% of the Night Elf population, though some outsiders believe they rule the race. That is not the case. The Sentinels command the rest of Night Elf society, not including druids. priestesses of Elune who answer to Taronda Whisperwind direct the Sentinels. Every race has its rebels, of course, and so some Night Elves believe they have been removed from the well long enough to have overcome its lure. These young Night Elves believe they can study the arcane arts without fear and finally master the skills that overwhelmed their ancestors, using the well's magic to repair the damage done so long ago. Most Night Elves consider this preposterous and believe their kin have become High Elves in all but name, falling into the same trap those cousins do, and thus heading toward the same dire fate. Many Night Elf elders believe these misguided children should be shown their error of their ways by any means necessary, to save not only them but the rest of the race and even the world. And that's about where we stand right now, but I do think that that relationship evolves. Okay, and Furbolgs, now that they're an official race. Despite their size and strength, the Furbolgs are a quiet, unassuming race. They live in small tribal villages and keep to themselves. Because they keep their lives uncomplicated and live so close to nature, Furbolgs are closely attuned to the world around them, particularly animals. Every Furbolg tribe has its shaman, and they're held in high regard. Because of this, Furbolg have great respect for any divine spellcaster, but particularly for druids and shaman. They believe the world speaks to its people through every plant and animal. Those who learn that language are simply more blessed because they can communicate more directly with nature and thus better understand its needs and desires. Furbolgs have little understanding of arcane magic, however. Arcane magic involves bending the world to one's will, and that concept is antithetical to Furbolg philosophy. As a race, Furbolgs believe in living within nature, adapting to its demands, and thus finding harmony with the world around them. Arcanists destroy that harmony, wresting control from nature and forcing it to serve them instead. And in many ways, this is a gross violation. Because of this belief, Furbolgs do not trust Arcanists, seeing them as either fools with delusions of control or madmen meddling with forces they cannot comprehend and should not touch. They also see arcane magic as a tool of the Legion, which corrupted many of their people. Those few Furbolgs who study the arcane learn to do so quietly, lest their tribes find out and punish them for such arrogance. Yeah, I don't have a lot to say about that because other than a handful of times, you don't get deep dives into Furbolgs. Again, that should change. Maybe as we learn the race of these new Winterpelt Furbolgs, we'll get a little more. I don't really know. I saw that was promised in this latest content drop, and I did the little initial line, and then I thought it said, like, check your adventure guide to see how to further advance the race, but I don't know how. I'll have to maybe research it some. Maybe they're like some quests somewhere, or I did see that there were like, you could randomly get drops of like these things that you could turn into the Furbolgs, but then outside of a couple times in Azure Span, I haven't actually found any of them. Okay, gnomes. Gnomes are bright, curious, friendly people. I love them. They love questioning, love inventing, and love exploring, all of which makes them oddly suitable for arcane study. Yet most gnomes have too much humor and humility to become enamored of their own power, or to look down upon others. This attitude is a great relief to those who have seen gnome magi in action, because if they had the same arrogance as blood elves or ambition as humans, gnome spellcasters would pose a serious threat to the world. Gnomes are far less likely to follow the path of divine magic. Most of them are too grounded in earthly desires and too distracted by intellectual pursuits to become devout, or even to pay much attention to the various eternals and philosophies. Gnomes revere creature comforts and creativity more than nature or any particular being, no matter how grand. I think you can be a gnome priest now. Gnomes do not look down upon healers, however. In many ways, the gnomes respect such people because they cannot imagine following such a path themselves. They can see the merits of a devout life and the clear results of divine favor, but have no interest in pursuing such activities. Many gnomes feel that way about arcane magic as well. They admire the results and respect the dedication, but are not willing to spend all their time in such pursuits. The gnomes tolerate magic because more than any other alliance race, perhaps more, because they are content to let others follow their own interests. Most gnomes are not concerned about the risk of magi creating another magical cataclysm, especially since they're always ready to interrogate each mage, get his advice, and then deflate his ego and keep him from becoming power mad. I don't think that's true at all. Gnomes are definitely prone to be mages, and there's definitely many power mad ones. And humans. Members of the other races sometimes feel that humans could be their salvation or their destruction. Humanity has demonstrated time and again its capacity for overpowering passion, levels of emotion far beyond what their allies consider seemly or even approachable. Coupled with this passion is a burning ambition, not just of an individual, but of the race as a whole. Humans wish not just to survive, but to improve and to win. This makes them incredibly useful, incredibly strong, and incredibly dangerous. Nowhere is human potential more evident than in the realm of magic. The High Elves taught humans arcane magic and were astonished to discover their short-lived students' capacities. Many human magi succeeded where others failed, and not because they were wiser or smarter, but because they would not surrender control. Yet despite this, humanity does not have the arcane addiction the High Elves suffer. Some humans become obsessed with the arcane, but many want nothing to do with it and are perfectly happy avoiding all signs of magic. In the same way, some humans have no use for religion, but others show a religious fervor unmatched by the most devout night elf or the most reverent furbolg. Druidism is more difficult for humans because it involves quiet contemplation and a sense of one's own inferiority compared to the needs of the whole. But some humans have the necessary concentration, consideration, and calm, and have become exemplary wardens of the wild. Nowadays, really, that's just cool tyrants. As a race, humanity is fascinated by magic. More people want it than don't, and even those who want no part of magic love hearing tales of its use and seeing demonstrations of its might. Humanity's gift and curse is its youth. Many claim the race is young compared to its allies, and so humans as a whole have not learned caution. They listen to the tales of magi corrupted by their studies and believe such a disaster could never happen to them. They hear about healers who lost faith and pity the other races for being weak or losing discipline. Humans believe they can overcome any obstacle and do not understand that some obstacles are insurmountable by their nature. This arrogance gives humans a great advantage when daring some new feat or striving against a powerful foe, but it also makes them overconfident and easily lured into bad situations. Contact with the other races has slowly changed humanity's attitudes. As more humans learn both arcane and divine magic and hear the advice and experience of their older friends, they see their true place in Azeroth and their true importance in the grand schemes of the world and its major powers. This may someday temper human enthusiasm with wisdom and human ambition with responsibility. The other races continue to hope for this outcome and continue to watch human arcanists and healers with a mixture of awe and dread. Alright, so now let's get into the spells. Alliance members can gain access to many new spells. In most cases, talented Alliance arcanists and healers develop these spells and pass them on to their allies. Their brethren shared their new knowledge with others, and use of these spells spread through the Alliance. In rare cases, Horde members or unaffiliated factions might develop these new spells on their own or steal knowledge from the Alliance. In either case, use of these spells outside the Alliance is rare. Alright, so we're going to get into Alliance-only spells. So starting with Arcanist spells, remember that an Arcanist can be basically a mage, but also a warlock and a necromancer are considered Arcanists as well. So we're just going to, it doesn't really, I think this is a, yeah, okay. So this is the spell list. We're actually going to, let's actually do that. Let's stick to the spell list, and then we'll be skipping all of the spell descriptions because I think that'll actually be quicker. Okay, so the cantrips at level 0, there's Arcane Lure. You basically cast it on a spellbook or scroll, and it draws attention to spells you don't know. That's weird. Let's go down and see that. Any written spells you don't know glow. Only you can see the glow. That's kind of dumb. I think that's a stupid spell. A waste of a spell slot. But it is a cantrip at least. Clean Slate takes writing and puts it on a new sheet of paper. Okay. Freehand helps you draw really good lines and angles. And Peer Mark, it helps you tell who is the smartest about arcane stuff. Those are stupid spells, I'm sorry. I can never, ever, ever see using a cantrip on anyone other than an NPC with those. Okay, first level, there's Body Fade, which makes you invisible into dark vision. So if it's already dark and no one can see except those with dark vision, you're also invisible to that. So it's like way light invisibility. Copy Slate is just like Clean Slate, except it straight copies it instead of just moving it. Dexterous Charge Um, helps you charge better. Record helps, it writes things down. Stupid. And sleep, that is not new. Sleep is a straight up normal Dungeons and Dragons spell. Why is that new? I don't know. All right, second level aerial shackles just hold specifically. It's like a hold flying creature. Blur also, that's a normal D&D spell. Closer look helps you get extra bonus to craft and use tech device. Graybeard helps you. It's basically like a friend spell that only works on old people. Penalty shunt. It helps you temporarily. Like, let's say you were really weak, you could move your penalty from strength to another stat. Again, these are lame. Third level spells, we have deep slumbers, just a strong sleep. Slow, that's a normal spell. Fourth level is dimension blink. We have a much better version than blink with misty step now, which is, I think, either a first or second level spell. Fifth level, phase shift. I don't know if that exists now, but it says if you get hit, you go incorporeal, and then telekinesis, which is, a lot of these are actual just D&D spells. Okay, those are just generic. All arcanists have access to them. Alliance ones. All right, mage spells. The only new mage first level spell is Night Glide, which makes you better at stealthing in the dark. Second level spells is Brace, which helps strengthen walls. Bracing Sleep. Oh, it lets you do all of your studying while getting a full rest from sleeping. So I guess you can kind of like cut your resting in half. Circle of Knives. It's like fan of knives around you that you, I guess you got to have those for the wardens. Delve lets you burrow. Revelry makes music, but only the people you want to can hear it. That'd be cool, like if you lived in an apartment. It's like having AirPods in. Third level mage spell is Mana Flare. It makes it to where people take damage for casting spells near you. And Night Blind, it's blindness, but it only works at night. This is, what a dumb spell. Fourth level mage spell is Greater Circle of Knives. It's actually pretty strong. 15d4. Orc Bait, it enrages orcs, but they don't gain they gain all of the bad, but none of the good from the rage. Recounting. It's kind of, actually, it sounds like it's like what happens on Elden Ring or any of the Dark Souls games when you see a ghost image of someone that recently died or whatever. It's a ghost image of someone that did something in the past in that area. Lesser Shadow Strike, it's just like Shadow Strike, but that's actually pretty good. It does 68 and then it has the 3d8 dot. Weighted Violence. All weapons become slower. So basically it slows everyone's melee attacks. Fifth level mage spell, Mass Night Blind. Sixth level Summoning Charm. It creates a charm others can use to talk to you. That has a little M next to it, like it came from another book. Greater Shadow Strike is just a strong version of the other one. There's only one new Warlock spell, which is Vengeance, which summons an avatar of vengeance. That's for the wardens. A few new healer spells. There's a healing cantrip. Sounding. I guess it lets you tell the density of material. Yeah, whatever. I feel like that should just be like a racial skill or something. Bracing Sleep, second level, is the same one we had before. Fourth level healer, phase shift, same as the Arcanist. Druid spells, new cantrip, Light Rider, so they don't, like, they can ride their steed and the steed can not feel their weight. First level Druid spell, Call a Flying Steed to you. That's for the Wind Rider class. Earthsign Shadow, people actually think that you're a bear. Okay. Oh, they think you're an actual bear instead of a druid. All right. Because maybe druids naturally give off a shadow of like their true shape. Second level druid, Delve, the burrow one. Third level bonded mount. You're aware, you can tell where your mount's at. Cyclone, just like the regular druid spell in the game. Protective foliage, you gain light, so you draw the leaves to you, and it actually gives you extra armor. That's cool. And greater roar, just like roar, but it gives you a bigger bonus. Sixth level earth bond. You can't move and draw the earth up all around you, but it gives you strength, stamina, armor, damage resistance. Okay, priest spells. There's first level Ancestral Touch. It reveals where Titans were. Kin Trace, you can find people that are within your race. Second level spells, Align Weapon. You can make it a good, evil, whatever kind of weapon. Fourth level, Drilling. It's better. It avoids dangerous digging areas while you're drilling. What are these niche spells? Fifth level pre-spell, Blood Tie. It casts like a hold, but for people of your race only. Shaman and Witch Doctor both. They have these spells. First level Spirit Kind, which gives you extra charisma bonus to dealing with incorporeal creatures. Fourth level Crushing Wave. It's like a literal kind of tidal wave, but like in a single line, like a lightning bolt. And one new Paladin spell, which is a line weapon, just like we had on the other second level spell. All right, and then it goes on to have all these. There's some ugly Furbolgs guessing, and this just describes them all. And now we've already gone through them, so we don't need to look at the actual stats. Or I think our descriptions that we got are pretty enough. A bit of errata. The levels of Fog, Cloud, and WoW RPG, the old one, are incorrect. It's now a level 2 spell for Elementalists, Druids, and Arcanists. I forgot about the Elementalist. Okay, and then we just have all these pages of describing the spells. The artist, I'm sorry, this is not the best art that they've had. I don't even know what the heck that's supposed to be casting. Maybe that's Warrior's Shadow. Wait, we didn't have all this. Yeah, I feel like some of these, there was no Warrior's Shadow. So I guess I'll glance through and see if there's any others we didn't see. Yes. Social Touch, Arcane Lure, Blood Tie Blur, Body Fade, Bond and Mount, Brace, Bracing Sleep, Call Flying Steeds, Circle of Knives, Greater, Clean Slate, Closer Look, Copy Slate, Crushing Wave, Cyclone, Deep Slumber, Delve, Dexterous Charge, Dimension Blink, Drilling, Earth Bond, Freehand, Greybeard, Kin Trace, Light Rider, Mana Flare, Night Blind, Mass, Night Glide, Orc Bait, Pure Mark, Penalty Shunt, Face Shift, Protective Foliage, Record, Recounting, Revelry, Greater Roar, Shadow Strike, Sleep, Slow, Sounding, Summoning Charm, Telekinesis, Earthsign Shadow, Vengeance. I don't remember this Warrior Shadow. Maybe I missed it. What does Warrior Shadow do? That's the only one. So, of course, the one I see. It makes the person grow larger and more shadowy and take on a fearsome form. It unsettles foes. Anyone who sees this becomes frightened or shaken. And it only affects those that are weaker than you. Okay. I don't know how I missed that. All right, so now we're moving on to magic items. So we're just going to glance over. I'm not even going to fully read the descriptions. But let's start with magic armor. There's Armor of the Glade. It looks like it's big and heavy. It's reserved for Furbolg, Shaman, and when it's worn in the forest, it's extra strong. But it's just basically, it also has Spirit Kind spell on it. Okay, Griffin Mail is just like you wear it on top of Griffin. It's studded leather that's very strong, and it makes you better at handling your mount. Leaf Mail. It looks like a protective leafy camouflage. It's like a +4 leather, but also helps you be better at stealth. Rockbind armor. It's a dwarven armor that basically looks like you're wearing a rock chainmail. It's a +3 chainmail, and you can keep adding rocks onto it to make it have more and more armor class. That's cool. All right, magic weapons. There's an emotive blade, a red tinged blade. It's a +1 long sword. And the stronger you get it, the power attack feat, the stronger that you apply to it, it actually helps the sword get stronger too. So basically you're getting like double bonus from power attack if you use it. Orcan Blade, it is a sword that hates orcs. It's a +1 keen longsword that is very good about, you get extra +5 when you fight orcs. Stealth Death Gauntlet, it's a melee gauntlet for punching. It's a +1 that lets you also dispel magic at it with a touch. Of course, the storm hammers, they are what we know. They're +1 throwing hammers, but when you throw it, you get it back in your hand, and so basically you have like infinite ammunition with it. Doesn't really do anything like storm-like though. It does say it's a shock dwarven battle hammer, so okay, it's doing some shock damage. All right, some special rings. There's the faux register. Glows when orcs are around. Ring of kinship. It helps you do better about talking to people of your own race. The shadow hide ring. It lets you cast body fade multiple times per day. The Sunwell ring. That's cool. If blood elves wear it, they don't suffer from their arcane addiction. That's pretty cool. All right, on to the wondrous items. There's Amity wine. If you drink it, you can't fight for 24 hours. And if they save, you can fight, but you suck at it. Okay, blooded bracers. They're bracers of armor, but the more verbal blood that's spilled, the more armor it gets, whether it's from friend or foe. Boots of Elvenkind, that's actually straight up D&D. You get you're extra good at stealth, moving silently. Greater braces of archery, what it sounds like, and lesser as well. Circlet of Eminence, you constantly have a graybeard spell. Weird. Cloak of Elvenkind, same thing, you're better at stealth. Constant Parchment, you do a command word and then the parchment's locked permanently into its current state, so it can't be burned, ripped, whatever. Weird. Dirtied. I feel like some of these are just what? Like, are we really going deep into making like a researching scholar class and that's going to be what you role play? Like, I'm going to study, roll a d20. I'm going to copy this text. Like, that's my spell. Like, I can't. This sounds like the most boring campaign ever. Darkening dust. You just throw the dust and it makes darkness spell. Eyes of the engineer. Some goggles, glasses that help you be better at making engineering. Flute of unease. You play the flute and it dazes people. Griffin lure. It lures you. It's a whistle you blow, and only griffins can hear it, and they will come. And then you can attune yourself with the griffin if like you are appropriately classed. Okay, so let's read a little. Nestled in these things, we have a little side text. Decynth raised a quick look over the rise, risked a quick look. Below and to the right, he saw a figure standing lazily, a heavy short sword in his hand. He recognized the stocky outline, particularly the squared head and snout-like nose. Orc. What do we do now? Decynth wondered as he ducked back behind the rock. He and Ware had located the raiders, but were probably outnumbered. He counted at least 3 bodies there besides the one standing watch. We provide a little music, Ware replied with a grin, tugging a long, pale tube from his pack. It was a flute, Decynth realized, made from bone most likely, long as his forearm and slender as his thumb. In the starlight, he could just see a tracery down its length, some sort of pattern. It's beautiful, Decynth whispered, reaching out a hand but stopping just short of touching it. How will that help? His friend grinned at him. He set the flute to his lips and breathed softly against it, producing a haunting note, and then he bent over the flute and began to play in earnest. Listening to the sad melody that flowed from the instrument, Decynth felt strangely calm, his worry fading away. Then Ware gestured over the rise again, and Decynth, looking quickly, saw a strange thing indeed. The guard was standing there still, head cocked to one side as if listening, but not moving otherwise. The 3 beside him were sitting up but also not moving, as if transfixed. Decynth glanced back at Ware, about to ask what this meant, but his friend merely grinned and nodded, returning the gaze. Returning the grin at last, Decynth lifted his bow, strung it, and fitted an arrow. It might not have music like Ware, but no one used a bow like the Calderai. With the music behind him, he rose up and let an arrow fly. That's the Flute of Unease we're reading about. This is the chart for all of the money. So orc bait helm, when we get there, that's the most expensive thing. The hungry parchment's the least, which we're about to read about. All right, heritage lenses. They're goggles that specifically allow you to see as though you're using ancestral touch. Okay, whatever. Hidden messaging tools. It's a little ink pen that lets you write in complete privacy or send messages only a recipient can receive. Okay, those are actually kind of useful. I can see that. Hungry parchment, you write it, or you lay it copies the copy. It copies whatever parchment you make it touch. The copy's exact. The original is unharmed. If it's larger than the hungry parchment, oh, so it's not actually hungry. It just copies things. Kin shield. Okay, it's a furbolg shield that protects you from other furbolgs. If a furbolg tries to attack it, they have to make a saving throw, and if they can't, they cannot attack it for the next few hours. If they fail their save. A mask of belonging. 3 times a day, it allows them to make you look like a member of a different race. Okay. Multi-quill. They stand upright, and as you write with one, it creates these copies, and you can basically be writing multiple copies at once. Jeez, they're devoting a lot of energy into that. Mystic Lantern. It is a lantern that works, but it just shows magical writing. Mystic Lenses. It's like the Mystic Lantern, but it is glasses. Orc Bait Helm. This is that most expensive one. Permanent orc bait spell. So basically, it constantly makes orcs suck, which is why it costs so much. Pick of Speed. It's a mining pick, and you can just pick your brains out. Protective Fetish. It helps protect you from attacks by animals. So animals will not want to attack you if you have that fetish on. So, is this something for furries? I guess it's the opposite. That's a different kind of animal fetish. Protective Reins. The Wildhammer Dwarves, they can attach it to their griffins to fly better. Quiver of Janala. It has 3 portions into it, so they can basically store a ton of different stuff. I've actually seen something like that. Either I can't remember if I read it in this D&D or I saw it in a different kind of D&D, but basically, maybe it was in the Horde one too. They had something similar, but it's like you can put like weapons in one part, like javelins in another, and ammo in another, and it all fits in one little quiver. Rainbow Vial, you can write in all kinds of colors. Aren't you excited? Ready to start a campaign as a scholar now? What if I add a resting bed into this? It's a stick of chalk, and you outline soil, and it turns that spot into a bed. Rock Meld Pythons, probably used for climbing. Yeah, so it's basically like climbing, but once they get in there, they're really in there until you want them out. Rock Sight Goggles, you can see through rock. Cool. Saddle of Ease, it gives you basically like that spell, so it's easier for your mount to carry you. A Scholar's Tome, you say a command word, and if they're not as powerful as you are, they can't open the book. Study Glass, it has a closer look spell. It's like a mega magnifying glass. The Sunwell Lantern just casts a lot of light. Oh, and it creates that spell that makes you immune to the effects of the withdrawal from the Sunwell. Okay, so that's cooler, like within, again, NPC type stuff within that campaign, or if you were playing that character, those things would be almost indispensable. A transfer lens, I'm gonna guess it involves copying text. A tunnel maker, probably what it sounds like. And a weighted belt, it protects its wearer from repeated attacks. So if you get hit by someone, then that person's attack's slow. So basically, people that with multi-attack aren't going to be as well. Okay. So the relationship, this was interesting. I mean, this chapter was highs and lows. I liked the relationship and the conversation and the thoughts that it sparked, even if a lot of it has been retconned, with how each of the new races, including things like Furbolg, relate to magic. But the magical items, by and large, were just doo-doo. So this is like, so 5 of the pages in this chapter, if you add the flavor text, we can up to 6. 18 pages, 19 pages wasted. So that's, again, how you take a book that used to be 125 and change it into 500, is you quintuple the chapter lengths with stuff that's really not adding a lot of value. But hey, I hope that this episode added some value to your life, because now it's in the pipe 5x5, and we'll be moving on to the next one when I see you guys next time on Lore of Warcraft. Thanks for watching.